Today's project is auction truck number 3, replacing the alternator. So I've already replaced the battery sitting over there. It was a 2019. The battery light's been coming on and off intermittently after purchasing it at the auction. I drove it a good bit. I probably drove it 50, 75 miles, I'd say. Drove it home from the auction, which that's a 45-minute drive. Drove it around a little bit. The battery light still was coming on and off, just randomly, right? Especially low RPMs. So I did some digging online. It appears that it's going to be the alternator. Thankfully, they're relatively easy to replace on this F-150 behind. Now, this one is going to be a 2010. So essentially to get to the alternator, which is right there, and it actually doesn't look too terribly bad. I don't know if it'll have a date code on it, but I am going to look at it. But I'm going to go ahead and pull off this screw here, pull off those screw there, take that portion out of this, and then we will see if it's something with the alternator, or maybe it's another issue entirely. We'll see. I'm hoping it's just the alternator, but obviously there's no way to know until we get a new one in, or until I can look at that one and see if it's got like a date code or anything on it. So I got the plastic box off. It's quite simply just those two screws. So the one on that end, the one on that end, and then it pulls apart. Next thing after that, you're going to want to take the battery out. I entirely removed it because I couldn't get my red wire to stay away from the post, so I just totally took it out of the vehicle. And then you're going to remove the two wires on your alternator. So this is going to be your alternator. You're going to have a wire here with a clip, and then you're going to have a wire here that's going to be screwed on to this. And this is going to be your wire. So this is the part that's screwed on. It will be underneath this little cap. So you just pull that cap right off of there, and then you just pull this plug right out. So this just has a little clip that goes right there. That's what you're going to pull out on that. And then this part is just kind of onto this little stud right there. So now that that's removed, I'm going to have 4 different bolts that I'm going to be removing. It looks like at some point they replaced this because this one doesn't match. I'm not sure if that's normal, but we've got this one here, this one here, this one here, and that one there to remove the alternator. Now, before I do that, I'm actually going to go ahead and take the tension off. So you're going to want to use your tensioner to take some of the tension off of the belt. And then I'm going to use some zip ties to kind of hold this belt up so it doesn't fall all the way off. Now, it's not the end of the world if it does, because you can kind of see where it goes down in there. It essentially just kind of winds. So it goes from the alternator here down below this pulley here, goes around that one there, and then underneath that one, over the top of that black one there in the middle, and then down and around the big one down here at the bottom before coming back up, going around that guy, and then coming back up this way. However, I would prefer to not have to mess with it, as that belt does feel like it's good to go. It doesn't have any like rips or tears or anything on it that I'm seeing, no cracking on it. So I'm going to just keep this same belt. So I'm going to kind of, after I remove the tension from it, I'm going to kind of tie it up so it kind of stays in place on all those pulleys. Now I'm going to need 2 hands for this, and especially because I don't have a longer bar, I'm probably going to end up putting some sort of an extension onto this. But essentially you're just going to get a 1/2-inch drive ratchet down here. So this is going to be a 1/2-inch drive, and that's going to go right down here on the tensioner. Okay, so you've got this end, goes right here. You're going to want to put it on forward or on reverse, I believe, because you're going to want to crank it down. I guess that's forward. And you're going to kind of push down. Now this is going to be really hard to see and do with one hand, but essentially you're just going to get onto this and you're going to move it this way to release the tension on that belt. Now I've already got a little strap around here just kind of hold the bolt up, but I'm not going to be removing a ton of slack. Essentially with that tensioner, it's going to pull down, and then your bolt is going, or then you're going to pull the belt off the top of your alternator here. So I'm going to go get a long pull to put onto this to make this a little bit easier to go sideways with. So I could barely budge this with 2 hands, and I just want to show you how much easier it is. I just pulled this off of my floor jack. How much easier it is when you've got such a long handle on it. So it literally is just pulling. Oh man, look at how easy that is. I can even do it with one hand. I'm using the other hand to hold my phone. So a gazillion times easier to take the tension off of that if you just have a big long pull attached to your 1/2-inch drive socket. These are just going to be 4 10mm bolts. So you've got this one there, that one there, that one there. And this one does require you to have a deep well. And then also, because I've got a smaller one for my deep well, makes it a little bit more difficult to get off. Of course, because it's got that prong on there that part slips onto for the wire. So that of course makes it a little bit more difficult to get off rather than being able to use a bigger ratchet. Last thing you're going to do is remove these 2 bolts here on the bottom of the alternator. So that one there and the one on this side. Now you don't actually have to remove them. You just have to loosen them as this slides up. So it actually like sits onto those bolts. So just loosen them up, and then this should pop out. For the 10mm bolt on this side, it is a little bit easier if you have an extension, just because the head of the socket ratchet, I should say, goes here, and so that makes it kind of tough. So if you've got an extension, it makes it considerably easier to loosen up this 10mm bolt on this side. Now I've gotten both loose. Let's pull it out. So this is what it looks like here at the bottom. So you can see it's just going to kind of slide down over those bolts that are on the bottom. So literally once you get them loose enough to separate them, then this just picks right up and off. So new one's in place, got those 2 bottom bolts in, so it's good and tight. Now I'm going to put the bracket back across the top, wire it back up, put the belt back on, put the battery back on, and then we will put that back on as well, and then we'll test it. Now, one thing I did want to mention before I put this error box back on the top here, you do want to make sure that your pulley goes back in the same spot that it was before. So this was half sticking off of this, the belt, I should say. This belt was half sticking off of this pulley after I went and put it back on the top here of the alternator. So you do want to make sure that when you're using that tensioner that you go ahead and pull the tension off and make sure you're putting it back in the correct spot on your pulley, so that way it's not hanging far off that side, hanging far off the front. Just take a good look through there and make sure it looks like it's still on all of your pulleys where it should, especially those like these down here where it's got the grooves in them, or this here, you know, make sure it's not hanging way off the front. You know, make sure it's in the exact same spot where it should be. So just something you'll want to check before you let the tension off of your tensioner. But as you can see, that's all put back together again, all wired back up, bolts are all in. So last thing is just put the airbox on, put the battery in, and then we'll give it a try. So an inaugural test of the new alternator. Took a bit longer to crank than it normally would. Not sure if that's an alternator issue or that's another issue entirely with the truck. The main issue that I was having was the battery light coming on. So on the camera, it kind of looks like there's some chasing on there. That's not, that's just because of the lights that it is. So I'm going to go ahead and take it on a test drive and we will see if the battery light stays off or not. So I drove it a bit and battery light did not come back on. So I will, of course, test drive it over the next couple of days before I return this core. But it does appear that that was the issue that was causing the battery light to come on intermittently, was just the alternator wasn't putting out power correctly. And it was just happening now and again, especially at idle, so when you were in park, but especially if you're like in drive or in reverse. So when your RPMs would idle down, it would like the alternator wouldn't put out enough power, so then the battery light would come on and it would ding at you. Whereas now I've actively got it in reverse, and my RPMs are staying about the same. Gonna put it in neutral, just kick up a tiny bit, put it in drive, kick down a tiny bit, but nothing is changing in regards to the battery, in regards to battery light. And I cranked up the AC all the way as well, because obviously that puts a pretty good draw on it, and battery light still has not come on. So it looks like it was an alternator issue.